Hello 7th graders, this is Ms. White, and today we're going to be doing lesson 10, understanding multiplication of integers. The goal for us is to figure out the product of a positive integer and a negative integer. Let's look at part A. For part A, we're going to look at the 4 cards in our hand. The 4 cards you will have in your hand are 3, -2, -5, and 4. Under our card, -5, we see that we have this star right here. This indicates which of the 4 cards to copy or to multiply from in part B. As we look in part B, we see that there's 3 stars underneath the last 3 cards here. We are going to go ahead and put those as -5, since in part A, -5 is the card that has the star underneath of it as well. Now we're going to fill out the rest of our cards that were left on top. So that's 3, -2, and 4. Use your cards from part B to answer the questions below. A. Write a product that describes the 3 matching cards. So when we have the word product, that means that this is a multiplication problem, that we are going to write a multiplication problem. Because we have 3 cards up top for -5, the quantity we have is 3 times -5. Remember, when we always multiply by a negative, we put parentheses around that negative number. That is the product of the 3 matching cards. Now for B, write an expression that represents how each of the star cards have changed your scores. Remember that an expression is like equation, but we do not use an equal sign and we do not have an answer. So for this, we're going to use -5, remember we always put parentheses around it as well, plus -5 plus -5. C, write an equation that relates these 2 expressions. So now it wants us to put these 2 expressions together and set them equal to one another. So our equation that has an equal sign will be 3 times -5 equals -5 plus -5 plus -5. D, write an integer that represents the total change to your score by the 3 star cards. Let's look at our equations that we wrote in C. We have 3 times -15. If we have a positive times a negative, that will give us a negative number. And 3 times 5 is 15. So in this case, the integer that represents the total change of our score is -15. If you also want to add -5 plus -5 plus -5, we will get -15. For E, it says write an equation that relates the product and how it affects your score. Remember that an equation always has an equal sign in it. So now we are understanding that 3 times -5 gives us a product of -15. All right, let's flip over to the next page. Again, in part C, we are going to have different cards in our hand. The cards in your hand that you have are -1, 5, -3, and 4. Now remember that the star indicates that in the next part that this will be the value of those cards in part D. So let's look below in part D. We know that the value of these stars are going to be 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4. Now let's fill the cards that we have left. So we still have -1, 5, and -3. Use your cards from part D to answer the questions below. Write a product that describes the 5 matching cards. So remember, a product is a multiplication problem. And so the quantity of cards that we have are 5 times the value of the cards, which is 4. G, write an expression that represents how each of the star cards changes your scores. Remember, an expression is like an equation, but it does not have an equal sign. And so when we add the value of our 5 cards, we would say 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. For H, it says write an equation that relates these two expressions. So now we are having an equal sign, and we are equaling the product that we wrote and the expression that we wrote. So we have 5 times 4 equals 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. I, write an integer that represents the total change to your score by the 5 star cards. Well, if we look at our product in F, we know that 5 times 4 will give us 20. We also know that 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 20. J, write an equation that relates the product and how it affects your score. So for J, we have 5 times 4 equals 20. K, use the expression 5 times 4 to relate the multiplication of a positive valued card to addition. So first, we're going to use our expression of 5 times 4. Then we know that 5 times 4 can also be represented as 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. We know that 5 times 4 and 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 gives us our value of 20. Now looking at the previous cards that we had in Part A and Part B, for L it says use the expression 3 times negative 5 to relate the multiplication of a negative valued card to addition. So again, we have our expression 3 times negative 5. Another way that value can be written is negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5. 3 times negative 5 gives us negative 15, and then negative 5 plus negative 5 plus negative 5 will give us negative 15 as well. So all those values are equal to one another. Let's move on to the next page. Example 2, product of a negative integer and a positive integer. A, if all the 4s from the playing hand on the right are discarded, how will the score be affected? Model this using a product and an equation. So first of all, let's think about what our question is asking. It says, how will the score be affected if all the 4s from the playing hand on the right are discarded? To explain this, it wants us to model using a product and an equation. Let's remember that product means multiplication. Let's look at our cards. We had the value of 4 in each card, and we have a quantity of 3. Because we are getting rid of these 3 cards, in our product, we write that as negative 3. Now, we can see the value for each card is 4. So we have negative 3 times 4, and that will give us negative 12. That means that our score is decreasing by 12 points. B, what 3 matching cards could be added to those pictured to get the same change in score? Model this using a product and an equation. Well, first of all, we know that we have 3 cards, so we can write 3. And we are subtracting the value from each one of those cards. When we do that, our cards are now valued at negative 4. So now we're going to write this equation as we have 3 times our value for each of our cards now, which is negative 4. and that gives us negative 12. Again, it means that our score is decreasing by 12 points. C. Seeing how each play affects the score, relate the product that you use to model them. What do you conclude about multiplying integers with opposite signs? For example, what we can show what we know about this is that negative 3 times 4 equals 3x times negative 4. And we know that because when we did it in the previous problems of A and B, we came up with the same value. So what we can conclude is that adding a value multiple times has the same effect as removing the opposite value the same number of times. All right, 7th graders, that concludes our lesson for today, and I will see you in class.